Okay, now we're on to chapter, well, 4 over here, but our second day overall of VBA. At this point, you should have gone through everything already in our introduction to macros and VBA to prepare you for this. We're going to talk about objects, navigation, and conditionals. And what I want you to do is to scroll down here, past the study guide, learning outcomes, into our video tutorials. At this point, you should have gone through our Excel VBA navigation practice and conditionals practice. And now we're going to take that a step further with more practice. I want you to download this material right here under more practice. Once you get that open, I want you to go to the navigation tab of this document. And we're going to start with this problem right here. It's going to seem very, I don't know, maybe a bit odd what we're doing here, but it's simply to give you practice learning how to use VBA to move your cursor around a page. So what I want to do is start by inserting onto the page your name, your class, your section, or if you're not part of our class and you're just using this video to learn VBA, put whatever you want in here, I don't care. Then we're going to come down and enter our favorite TV show. Then we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells, and we're going to write the text favorite serial. Next to that, we'll put our actual favorite serial, and then I want to go back to cell A1, all without using our keyboard or mouse. We want to do this in VBA. Lastly, there are some other rules. We may add new rows or new columns at any point, either in between section favorite TV show for a row or in between column A and wherever we put our favorite serial. We're going to insert new columns. We want to make this work either way. So this is going to give you practice using the common worksheet navigation functions in VBA. All right, let's open up Alt F11. Let's open up our VBA editor. What I want you to do, I'm going to close out all of these modules that are open because those have the answers on them, and obviously feel free to look at those instead of watching this video if that's any faster for you. I have another file open. I better close that so that it doesn't confuse people at all. Don't save. Now when I go into my VBA editor, I see VBA project, VBA day 2, which is the file, but there are several other of these, they look like workbooks, but they're actually add-ins to my version of Excel. Make sure you don't have one of those selected. I want you to click on today's VBA day 2 guide file and then click Insert Module. Now Module 1 already has answers to these problems on it. You're welcome to look at it if you want to, but we're going to work here on Module 2. Alright, let's create a sub. We'll call it Navigation. And in here, we're simply going to work our way around the page. Don't worry about the input processing output model for this example. It doesn't really apply as much. This is not your usual function that you'll be writing. Let's start by simply putting our name in cell B2. So we'll use our range B2, whoops, dot value equals, and then we'll put in double quotes because this is going to be text, your name. Alright. Next, let's put our class and section. So in B3 and B4, this is IS201, section 1. Let's hit F5 and run this. Alright, what did I do? I started at B2, and as a result I went down to 3, 4, I messed it all up. Well, not a problem. Delete those things and let's change our values to B1, 2, and 3. No big deal. Let's come down here and let's also add our favorite TV show now down in B6. Put in whatever you want. Run our program again. F5. Looks like everything's working. If you're a Mac user, again, or if you would rather just use these buttons up here, what I use, this play button is the equivalent of F5. Just hit that. Alright, next I need to go over 6 cells and put favorite serial and fill in the blank. Now, here's an important point. It says your sub should work even if new columns are added anywhere to the right of column 8. It should also work if we add new rows between section and favorite TV show. Okay, well, let's do that. Let's insert a row right here and run our function again. Delete this data. F5, run, and it's putting Walking Dead back exactly where we told it. That's because what we're using here are called absolute references. An absolute reference refers directly to the cell you want to put something in. Well, relative references are oftentimes better. It depends on the scenario, of course. But usually we'll use relative references for things like data cleaning and looping through a page, which we're going to get to later on. So it'd be good for us to start learning how to use them now. The way it works is all relative references are relative to a certain point. It could be a cell that's selected. It could be a number of different things. We're going to work with references that are relative to a selected cell. What this means is before we do anything else, I'm going to delete all of that. We're going to start by selecting a particular point on the page. So to do that, we're going to select range A1, which is an absolute reference, and this is the only one we'll use, dot select. Now select is different from things like value. In particular, look here, select has this icon which looks like a flying green eraser or something like that. Select is a method. It's something that range A1 can do, as opposed to a property like value. See, value has this little hand holding a piece of paper. I'm not sure what that icon means. But value is a property of the cell. It's something about cell A1. A1 has a width, it has a height, it has a bold set, it has a font family, it has a font size, it has a background color, it has borders. These are all properties of a cell, including the value or what's inside of it. Properties can be changed and they can also be read. We call it set or get. We can get them or we can set them. As a result, there will always be an equal sign on some side of this phrase here, this range A1. We call this an object. Everything in VBA or everything in here is an object. The workbook is an object. Each worksheet is an object. Each cell is an object. And objects have methods or properties. For full details on this, you should read this part of the chapter. It'll help you understand and make sense of all of these different options. So, unlike properties, methods, like select, are things that a cell does. As a result, we just write range A1.select and there's no equal sign. Select is simply something that will happen and there's no need to set, read, or write this method. So if I hit F5, notice my cursor just selected A1. And that's all that it does. Now that cursor is selected and we know that that cell is selected and we know that cell will always be selected as long as this line is processed, we can refer to other cells around that cell using relative references. So let's do that next. I want to put my name in cell B1. Well, if A1 is selected, I can refer to the active cell. Now, active cell is an object like range, but it refers not to a specific cell with an address, but it refers to whatever cell happens to have the cursor selected on it, which is A1. Active cell allows us to use some methods and properties of its own, like offset. Offset wants two inputs. It says row offset and column offset. So it wants two numbers. Offset 0, 0 means don't go anywhere. I'm referring simply to the cell that has a cursor selected on it. The first spot is the row offset. If I say 1, that means go down one row from whatever cell is currently selected. And if I change this to 1, it means go to the right one cell of what's currently selected. So right now I'm referring to cell B2 if A1 is selected. If I were to select B2, then this is now referring to C3. If I select C3, it's referring to D4. So back up here, A1, I want to go down 0 rows and over to the right one column, and I want to set the value. Remember, value is a property, and since we set and get properties, that means I'm going to have an equal sign, and I want to set the value of that equal to my name. Let's move this over a bit. Alright, let's play this. A1 gets selected. Homer Simpson just got put one cell over from the active cell. Okay, pause this and see if you can put in class section favorite TV show now. Let's do that next. Okay, oops. Let's take a look at this now. Let's run it, or step into it. F8 or Command-Shift-I. So my cursor's on B4. This line's going to move it back to A1. Now it's going to put Homer Simpson in B1, IS-201 in B2, Section 1 in B3, and then lastly Walking Dead in B7. Now you may be asking yourself or realizing, well, this doesn't help us at all any more than using range did before. Because if I were to delete a cell now, delete the values, stop and play my function, once again it's put Walking Dead in the wrong place. What it allows us to do is use some other methods that are very useful. So here's what I want you to do next. Let's assume that name, class, and section will always be in a row. The problem comes right here. At this point, we don't know what row favorite TV show is going to be on. So what we're going to do instead is go ahead and move our cursor down until we find the text favorite TV show. The way we'll do that in this example is we'll say active cell dot, and we're going to use the end. End is a property, not a method. End is the equivalent of the control button. Okay, end needs a particular input or a parameter to tell it which direction to end in. So end, remember, it's like holding the control button down. XL down to left, to right, and up is the equivalent of pushing the up, down, left, right arrows. So it's like you're holding control and hitting down. Okay, I'm going to stop right there before I do anything else and go back to the page. What happens if I were to hit control down from here? Well, control says skip all the way to the end of where you find a cell with the last cell that has data in it in a group. So because class is filled in, it's going to skip class and go directly to section. If I hit control down from right here again, it goes to A3. If I were to hit control down a second time, it's going to skip all of the rows, all of the cells that don't have anything, that are blank, until it finds another cell that has content in it. So if I'm at name, I have to hit control down twice to get down to favorite TV show. And at that point, I can then use ActiveCell.offset to put the favorite TV show right next to it. So let's delete these out of here. Back to my code. ActiveCell.endXL down. This will move it down one time. EndXL down. This will move it down a second time. Now at this point, I'm only referring to that cell. I haven't actually done anything. Remember, end is a property. It's just conceptually referring to whatever cell we would end on if we were to hit control down twice. It won't actually move our cell, our cursor, unless we hit select. Alright, so it's F8. Let's plug in the values of our name, class, section. Now at this point, the cursor goes down to A6, and we don't want to offset 6 down. At this point, we don't want to go down any rows at all. We simply want to go right one column. So play that and it works out fine. Now it doesn't matter how many of these we put in here. Insert a couple more rows, delete out the content, stop it, play it. It's always going to work correctly because control down, shift. Control down will keep finding favorite TV show no matter how many rows are in between it. Now you may have done this another way. We didn't actually have to select that cell at all. We could have simply said ActiveCell.endXL down, and then offset from there, and said offset, don't go down any more rows, but go over one column, .value, and set that equal to our favorite TV show. And that also would have worked just fine. We comment that out, delete this, and see if you can spot the difference between these two techniques. In this case, notice our cursor never leaves A1. Rather, we simply say go down, hit control down once, hit control down a second time, and then go to the right one cell and put in the value Walking Dead. Whenever possible, you don't want to have to move your cursor. That will make your program run slower every time you have to call that method select. So it's better to do it this way. However, I'm actually going to go back to this method because we still need, let me change that to select. We still need to move over 6 cells if we're going to follow the instructions and put our favorite serial. Alright, no problem. Let's go over 6 after that point. This part should be pretty straightforward for you by now. Offset down 0 columns over 6, dot value, and let's put the text favorite serial. Can't spell serial. Technically, the text in those other cells are bold, so we better bold that too. Active cell dot offset 0 6 dot value. Oh, not dot value, excuse me. Oh, and that's an O, not a 0. Let me fix that. What I'm going to do instead is say dot font, which is another property of that cell, dot bold, another property of that cell, equals true. So true is an exception here. I don't need quotes around this even though it's text. A Boolean value of true or false doesn't need to have quotes around it. And notice it turns it blue because it recognizes it's a Boolean value. Anyway, we haven't actually moved our cursor over there. Oh, I did. Oh, again. There we go. Haven't actually moved my cursor there. So if I'm going to put my favorite serial in now next to it, I'm going to offset this time 0, 7 because my cursor is still going to be over on A8 at that point. Dot value equals whatever you want to put in there. Okay, play button. Oh no, let's hit play F5. Over here, here's favorite cereal, Captain Crunch. It's all good. Last step. I want to move our cursor back to A1 without ever having to write the text A1 in my VBA code. How would I do that? Take a moment and pause and see if you can figure it out. One way would be to use the end function we just learned. ActiveCell.end. Now our cursor at this point is going to be back on A8. So I'm going to say end Excel up. I've got to hit Control up twice because the first time I hit up it'll just take it to A3. So I hit end Excel up a second time. Dot select. It should be all over. Let me move this aside. Let's delete all of this and start over from scratch. Back here, let's hit play. Cursor's back in A1. Everything's printed out. Alright, that's enough for this video. What did we learn? We learned active cell. We learned offset. We learned end. And we even learned how to set font bold. Alright, let's move on to the next example. Beef nut.